just after I make a couple of comments, one for the planning commissioners and presenters tonight. If you could just make sure you're speaking right into the microphone. That's my understanding of the best way to make sure we're all being heard. The meeting is being recorded on YouTube, broadcast on YouTube live, and recorded in a Zoom format for some people who would like to participate remotely. We'll be keeping an eye on the Zoom screen tonight if anybody has any comments that they'd like to say remotely through Zoom. And if just a couple of other notes, the video camera is right there up above you. And again, just speak clearly into the microphone and we should be in good shape for the meeting format tonight. So while I try to just get some things up on the screen here, Mr. Chair, if you want to go ahead and start the meeting, that'd be great.
Thank you so much. Good evening and welcome to the Charter Township of Van Buren Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. A roll call, please.
Jar.
Here.
Brian Cullen is excused. Medina Atchison is excused. Callie Barr.
Here.
Mika Garrett is excused. Sherry Budd.
Here.
Brian Kelly.
Here. We have a proposed agenda before us. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda is presented.
Second.
By Commissioner Budd, support by Commissioner Jar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And our approval of the agenda passes. We have our next item is the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of February 23rd, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Your support? The motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Barr, support or Commissioner Jar, and support by Commissioner Barr. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, that brings us up to our first item on the agenda, which is a public hearing. It's case number 21043, Applebee's Drive-Up Addition Special Land Use and Site Plan Review. The applicant, Frank Martin, on behalf of owner APVB LLC, seeks to construct an 11 by 14 to-go booth for online and pickup orders for the Applebee's restaurant. Any drive-through facility accessory to the principal use is a special land use in the C2 Extensive Highway Business District zoning district. The proposed special land use requires a public hearing. The location of the project is at a 1.3 acre site located at 10526 Belleville Road, parcel ID 83-06499-0003-715 on the west side of Belleville Road between West Lake Circle and North I-94 Service Drive. It is Zone C2 Extensive Highway Business District. We have a motion to open the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I move to open the public hearing for item 1, case 21043.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Budd. Do you have any comments or discussion on the motion? Any? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And our public hearing is officially open. So I believe at this point we could have anybody from the public come up and speak on this agenda item, or if there's anybody on our Zoom hearing, but
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do see some participants in the Zoom hearing for this topic. Again, this is for Applebee's. Is anybody in the audience here to speak about Applebee's? Okay, I do see some members of the applicant's team on that participation link, so I might just bring them in to speak as necessary, but otherwise we'll get to our reports as part of the new business item for this topic. So I don't believe they have any comments at this time. I didn't see their hands raised, so it looks like there are no comments on this item.
okay, thank you so much. Make one last call. Anybody want to speak on the Applebee's public hearing? Appears there's no public comment at this point. Have a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, hearing no comment, I move to close the public hearing.
We have support for the motion.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Barr. All in favor to close the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we are closed with the public hearing. Right, that brings us up to new business with our first agenda item, which is the Applebee's Drive-Up Edition Special Land Use Request and Site Plan Review. The location of the site we just went over, which is at 10526 Belleville Road, west side of Belleville Road between Westlake Circle and North I-94 Service Drive. It's currently Zone C2 Extensive Highway Business District. And I believe we would start off with a presentation on this agenda item from staff.
Mr. Chair, this is a small addition to the Applebee's restaurant at 10526 Belleville Road for the purpose of having a pickup booth where there will be some vehicle stacking. That land use is most similar to what we would call a drive-through or a drive-up window, which requires a special land use in Van Buren Township, even though it is a very small addition to the building at only roughly 400 square feet. But that use requires a special land use, and all special land uses in the township require both special land use review and a recommendation to the Board of Trustees, along with the public hearing that we just held, and site plan review. So the purpose of our comments at this point is going to be to go through the special land use report and then the site plan reports, and then we'll consider 2 actions on the project for both combined preliminary and final site plan review, as well as the special land use recommendation to the board. So with that, I'll defer to our planning consultant, Vidya Christian, for her comments.
Thank you, Director Power. As you had summarized, the applicant Applebee's is proposing to construct an addition to the existing restaurant on Belleville Road. The Planning Commission is familiar with the site. It is located on one of Walmart's outlots and is Zone C2, which is Extensive Highway Business District. And it's also part of the Belleville Road Overlay District, or the BROD as it's called. The proposed use is classified as a drive-through, even though it is a small to-go addition to the building, and as such requires special land use approval. There are specific requirements in the ordinance based upon which every special land use, is reviewed and considered by this commission. I shall go over those in brief. The first criteria is, will it promote the use of land in a socially and economically desirable manner? Now, the site is occupied by the existing Applebee's restaurant, which was approved in early 2000. It's a long-standing business that has been in the township's core commercial area and has served the residents of the township and also of the nearby areas. With the global pandemic over the last 2.5 years, businesses, especially service-based businesses such as restaurants, have really had to improvise in order to stay into business with restrictions on indoor seating and social distancing. Providing carry-out or contactless pickup of food has become one of the solutions that was used by the industry and now has become a part and parcel of how they conduct their business. Now, the applicant has noted that at this time, like other restaurants, a good portion of their business comes from just carry-out portion, because people like to order and just pick it up from a window rather than even come into the restaurant to pick up their food. So the proposed addition will keep the restaurant viable and provide additional service to the restaurants of the community, and will continue to promote the use of the land in a socially and economically viable manner. Now, the use is located off Belleville Road in our core commercial area, so it is really convenient. It is compatible to all the abutting commercial uses that are in there. It is right next door to a bank, and then the Tim Hortons, you have Walmart right there, along with the strip center to the south. The proposed addition is designed to allow for safe vehicular and pedestrian movement around the building. I will go over the details of that in our site plan review letter. The use is not likely to cause any kind of injury to any other business or the other properties in the neighborhood. No trees or landscaping is proposed to be removed as part of this proposal, so it is not affecting the quality of vegetation on the site. The Applebee's to-go proposal is within the provisions of land uses requiring special approval and conforms to the applicable regulations of the C2 zoning district. And finally, it is a valid exercise of the township's police power. In addition to these general requirements, there are specific requirements in our ordinance for drive-through restaurants. I'll summarize those in brief. Now, the entrance or exit from any such use needs to be at least 100 feet from the intersection of 2 streets. Now, this site is an outlot on Walmart and as such does not have direct access onto Belleville Road. All of these outlots have access onto an internal service drive, which provides a connection through 2 main access drives onto Belleville Road. So this standard is met The nearest intersection would be Belleville Road and I-94 Service Drive, which is over 950 feet away from the site. The ordinance requires that all such uses shall have direct ingress and egress through a paved major thoroughfare. Now, as a part of its overall access management plan, the township had determined at the time when Walmart went in that all of the outlots that would be created in the future would not directly open out onto Belleville Road, creating more traffic and circulation issues. Instead, they would all funnel back into a service drive that would run parallel to Belleville Road and then lead into Belleville Road. So as such, while the site does not directly open up onto Belleville Road, that is due to a design intent adopted by the township for access management, so we consider this standard as having been met. All lighting and illumination shall not shine onto any adjacent residential zoning district. This property does not abut any residential use or zoning, and this site is not in close proximity to any school or other places of gathering. So all of the general standards and the specific standards related to special land use approval for the drive-through use have been met at this time. So it would be our recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed drive-through to-go facility to the Township Board of Trustees, subject to site plan approval. And I will go over the site plan review also in brief so that the Planning Commission can have all their questions or clarifications in one discussion phase itself. Although the site is existing, our zoning ordinance says that the B-ROD is a mandatory overlay district. As such, existing sites need to make as much effort as they can to bring the site up to code or comply with the B-ROD district standards to the extent feasible. And the applicant has worked with the township in order to try and accomplish that. The site has an area of approximately 1.289 acres. The legal description is on the site plan. There are no minimum required site area for the C2 district. The proposed addition does comply with all of the setback requirements for the district. The location of the curb cuts and the cross-access remains unchanged. The site does have an existing sidewalk along its Belleville Road frontage. There are also sidewalks along the internal drive on the west and south side of the main drive aisle into Walmart. Now, the restaurant does have sidewalks on all of its sides so that customers who are parked over there can actually enter to the various restaurant entrances from whichever side they are parked in. One of the concerns we had pointed out during preliminary discussions is the location of the crosswalk on the north side of the building. The addition of this to-go portion of the building resulted in the crosswalk being right in front of it, which means any vehicle that pulls in too far would actually be overhanging the pedestrian crosswalk. The applicant, in response to that, has actually pushed the crosswalk further to the west so that it connects to a sidewalk that is on the bank property. This gives more distance so that in case somebody pulls up to the to-go window and are not exactly parked and are pulled too far front, you're still not going to hit a pedestrian who's crossing on the sidewalk. So that change was made. All of the parking spaces on the site are existing, and these where the applicant did receive a deviation for the total amount of parking on the site at the time it was originally approved in 2000. It's strange how it happens, but I reviewed the site plan originally when it was approved, and that is one distinct thing about the site plan. I still remember that they got a deviation for parking standards based upon demonstrating just how many are needed for an Applebee's franchise. The one thing we did recommend was, at this time, the applicant is not redoing the parking lot, but in the future, should they ever seal coat or repair the parking lot, at such time, they will have to double stripe all of the parking spaces. We did not have double striping as a requirement at the time this plan was originally approved. So the applicant has agreed to that and added a note to the plan stating that if they ever redo the parking lot, they will double stripe it as required under our ordinance currently. They do show the required loading space that does not conflict with any of the circulation drives. There are extensive landscaping requirements in the ordinance, and as an existing site, this property does meet a lot of those requirements. However, we don't know at this time if any of the landscaping over the years has become dead or diseased or was removed or replaced. So it appears at this time that the landscape plan meets the ordinance requirement. However, it would be our recommendation that the applicant work with Township administration to ensure that any missing or diseased vegetation that was removed over the years has adequately been replaced so that the plan does conform to what is required per the original approved site plan and also per the BROD regulations for the site. Tree removal is not applicable. Stormwater detention, they are not adding any additional impervious surface. The to-go addition is on area that is already paved. However, we defer to the township engineer for their call on that. A photometric plan has been submitted. There are existing wall-mounted and light pole fixtures that are 25-foot high, and any proposed fixtures are downward directed and shielded. Architecture, which would be one of the most significant additions, the initial architectural addition proposed for the to-go was not something that met our BROD standards. Subsequently, the applicant went ahead and revised it in order to construct the proposed addition exactly as the existing building so that the addition will look seamless like it's always been there rather than as an afterthought or as an add-on. The addition will have a flat roof with a decorative fascia and signage, and the revised architecture is now consistent with the BROD district regulations. A dumpster is shown on the northwest corner. It was always there, and it still continues to work well for the site, and its design is in compliance with our ordinance requirements. Finally, new signage is intended on the wall for the to-go service, and the applicant will have to submit for administrative approval of the signage. So the applicant has really worked well with the township in addressing the first review letter we did had significant number of things that needed to be addressed. The applicant has been very responsive in fixing each and every one of them. So at this time, it is our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant preliminary and final site plan approval in one step for the proposed drive-through to-go addition to Applebee's, subject to administrative review of existing site landscaping and providing additional plantings as required to meet the intent of the ordinance, and administrative approval of any signage. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe we have a report from Fishback on this item as well, correct?
Yes, thank you. Our letter is dated February 28th. We reviewed the plans for engineering and final site plan review, and the only impact that we saw was to stormwater. They did provide calculations showing that the existing detention basin had adequate capacity for the slightly additional impervious area. One of the things that we are recommending engineering and final site plan approval, and as we go into our pre-construction checklist, one of the items I'm going to add is that they confirm when the detention basin was last maintained, so that if it's a considerable amount of time, you know, if they're using the early calculations and the contours, that they confirm that. If not, it's got to be maintained to show the volume, okay? So that's all I have for that. Thank you.
Director Power, it looks that we have a review from Van Buren Fire Department on this item.
That's right. So the fire department reviewed this a couple of different times, and their comments remain the same. Their only comment is that fire department access will not be adversely affected by the addition of the booth. It is further understood that the building plans will be submitted for review at a later date. So the fire marshal has gone ahead with an approval recommendation as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. That would bring us up to any comments or presentation from the applicant.
Hi there. So we do have the applicant on our Zoom call tonight. I'm going to try to just make sure their volume is nice and loud, so at least the planning commission members can hear them. I'm not sure. We'll see how well that gets picked up in the recording, but we have Frank Martin and Tom Gergich from Applebee's here. So Frank and Tom, feel free to speak about your project.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. This is Frank Martin from Dorch and Martin Associates, the architect and applicant, and also on the Zoom call, as Dan mentioned, is Tom Gergich. He is the Vice President of Real Estate and Development for Team Showstack. So if there are questions regarding the show staff, the restaurant operation, or any of the real estate issues, he will be able to address those. And I do want to thank your planner and engineering consultant for the very concise report. I might be just a tad redundant, but I'm going to just mention a couple of things. Applebee's has been a business partner in Citizen and Van Buren Township since the early 20s, as early 2000s, as was mentioned. That's nearly 22 years, and has proudly served the residents of the township and others during the time. Until the recent pandemic, it was the traditional business as usual for the Applebee's and other full-service sit-down restaurants. However, everything changed when indoor dining was prohibited. Restaurants needed to adapt just to remain viable and continue to serve the community and their devoted guests. The pandemic increased the number of to-go orders and pickups, thus making the guest experience and delivery process more important. Applebee's already had mobile and telephone to-go ordering in place, but customers would need to park their vehicle and a crew member would deliver their order to their car, or they would come into the store to pick up their order, requiring, in some cases, when the crew member had to deliver the food, they would have to leave the restaurant and deliver the order at all times of the day and all kinds of weather. So in an effort to improve the guest experience and crew delivery with the increased to-go orders, Applebee's developed the to-go booth concept for favorable site locations. This site will be the first in the state of Michigan to provide this unique Applebee's feature. Customers, including multiple food order delivery services like DoorDash, will order with the mobile app or by telephone and then proceed to the to-go booth to pick up their order. The to-go booth provides improved safety for both the guests and the crew members by eliminating the need to leave your car or building to deliver and pay for the order and to provide additional condiments and etc. Designated parking spots will be provided for guests in the event they are early for their pickup. In that case, a crew member may deliver the order to the customer in their car or alert them by text that their order is ready for pickup at the to-go booth. Summarizing, this proposed addition will keep Applebee's viable and provide additional improved and convenient services to Van Buren Township residents while promoting the use of both social and economic environment as envisioned by the community. We believe this to-go booth proposal is a positive response to social changes, and we encourage your support and approval by granting the special use request and site plan approval. If you have any questions at all, I'd be glad to answer them, and I'm sure Tom would too. But I really appreciate the time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Martin. Do we have any questions or comments from any of the commissioners at this time? Commissioner Jar.
I have a question for Ms. Krishnan on the signage. That it wasn't clear to me where the signs were going to be located on the plan. Have you seen locations for the signs?
If you look at the elevations, Commissioner Jar, if you look on top of the to-go window, there is the lettering to-go. That is pretty much what they're proposing. And on the side, if you look at the Belleville Road facade, there is a to-go here and a to-go there. Those are pretty much the only two wall signs that they're proposing at this time.
And those two proposed signs are compliant with our BROD Belleville Road overlay?
The design is, however, the area is subject to review by Director Power before issuance of a permit.
Great. How about signage in the traffic area that to direct the cars in the correct direction for traffic flow? Have you seen signage, proposed signage for that?
I don't believe the applicant has marked the directional signage on the site, but those are exempt signages. They do not come under their total sign area requirements. However, we will review, there is a maximum sign limit, how big they can be to show drive-through this way or, pick-up window this way. So we'll definitely review it at the time they are building it to make sure that those signs are in place.
Was mostly concerned about them being there, period, so that the cars know which way to turn in order to flow around the building.
Exactly.
To your knowledge, is there any striping required for the stacking area around the to-go window?
Striping is not required, however, they were required to show the stacking on which they have. And since this is a to-go window, not a traditional fast food drive-through, we had to improvise the stacking requirements of the ordinance and ask for a reasonable amount. And they don't have to stripe it on the pavement, but they have shown it on the plan as required.
Great. And my last signage question is there a menu board associated with this project?
No,
No menu board.
no menu boards outside.
Actually, if I could, there is no ordering that is done at the booth or at the window. All ordering is either done through telephone, through a mobile app. So this is kind of a non-traditional booth, not like fast foods like McDonald's or Wendy's, where you order at a menu board and then go and pay and pick up. This is simply pickup.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any other questions from any of the commissioners? No? Do you have any questions from anybody in the audience or from the public? Or Director Power, do we have anybody chiming in on remote?
Nope.
No one? All right. So we have two requests this evening. Our first one is on the special land use recommendation to the Township Board. Our second one is we've been asked to look at the preliminary and final site plan review. So we'd be looking at two different motions for this. Is the commission ready to take action? Yeah. So if we could have a motion on the special land use.
Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move to recommend special land use approval to the Township Board for the applicant Frank Martin, AIA, on behalf of owner APVB LLC, to construct and operate an 11 by 14 foot to-go booth for online and pickup orders at the site located at 10526 Belleville Road, based on the analysis in the McKenna letter dated February 27th, 2022, Fishback letter dated February 28th, 2022, suppose the fire report dated December 23rd, 2021, and I think we had a letter of staff dated March 4th.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Budd. Do we have any comments or discussion on the motion? Seems we have none. Roll call vote, please.
Callie Barr? Yes. Sherry Budd?
Yes.
Jeff Jar?
Yes.
Brian Kelly?
Yes. And the motion for special land use is approved. So it brings us to our second item, which would be the request for approval of preliminary and final site plan approval. Anybody ready to make a motion on that?
What? I would be honored to. Yes. Well, thank you. At this time, I would also move to recommend, to grant the applicant, Frank Martin, AIA, on behalf of owner APVB LLC, both preliminary and final site plan approval to construct the 11 by 14 foot to-go booth for the online and pickup orders at the site located at 10526 Belleville Road. Noting the same set of letters as in the previous motion, McKenna letter dated February 27th, 2022, Fishbeck dated February 28th, 2022, VBT Fire dated December 23rd, 2021, and the letter of staff dated March 4th, 2022.
Thank you. Do we have support for the motion?
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Barr. Do you have any comments or discussion on the motion that's been presented? If you have no comments, can we do a roll call, please?
Sherry Budd? Yes. Yes. Jeff Jar?
Yes.
Yes, and the motion passes. Thank you so much to the applicant. You have your approvals.
Thank you very, very much. We look forward to getting this when we complete the drawings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Yes, thank you to the township and the board for your consideration, and we look forward to serving you for the next 20 years.
Thank you.
All right, item number 2 on our agenda, case 21004, JSB Builders LLC, final site plan. Sam Battelle, on behalf of JSB Builders LLC, has applied to construct a 16,280 square foot multi-tenant light industrial building with truck well and related site improvements. The site is located to the south of 6032 Schooner Drive, has a tax parcel identification number of V83018990003708. It is zoned M1 light industrial with a total area of 4.478 acres. The site is located on the west side of Schooner Drive, which is located on the south side of Michigan Ave between Beck and Denton Roads. We have a presentation by staff and consultants.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your summary of the case is all I would have said, so I'll go ahead and defer this to our planning consultant and then our township engineer, and then I'll speak on the fire marshal's comments before we hear from the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Power. As you had summarized, as the chairman had summarized, the applicant JSB Builders received preliminary site plan approval from the Planning Commission in September 8th of 2021 in order to construct a light industrial building with multiple tenant spaces and a truck well. That approval was subject to several conditions. And typically the two-step process involved is when they are given preliminary site plan approval, they subsequently have to finish making all the corrections and the conditions of the preliminary approval along with engineering, and then come back for final site plan approval, which is what they have done at this time. I'll summarize the conditions that you had placed on this plan in September. Since it's been a while, it's taken them a while to come to final site plan approval. They were required to stripe the crosswalk connection from the sidewalk on the south side of the building to the sidewalk along Schooner Drive, which has been done on this project. The correct notation of the number of parking spaces on the northwest side of the building. There was an error in the number of spaces noted. They did make that correction. We had asked for clarification regarding the truck bay that is shown on the south side of the building. On the west side. I always look at it upside down, so I'm thinking it is the south. It is not the south. It's on the west side of the building. And we had asked the applicant for clarification as to how the truck well would be used by other tenants, or is it limited only to the owner who intends to occupy that corner unit. Per the applicant, the truck well is provided with the door on both sides and will be available for use by any tenant based on their lease agreement. And in addition, each individual tenant will have an overhead door on the north side of their building. So should any of their tenants receive deliveries from a larger vehicle that requires an actual truck well, they will be allowed to use it based upon any lease details that they have worked out. Timeline with regard to development of the remaining portion of the site or installation of frontage landscaping at this time. This is the one condition that has not been met. If the Planning Commission recollects, the applicant is developing only a portion of the parcel. The south side of this parcel is still a significant vacant lot, which is marked as future development area. At this time, the applicant does not know if or when that portion will be developed. It could be as less as 18 months, or depending upon how many tenants they get, it might even be 10 years. We don't know that. So at the preliminary approval, we had noted that unless the applicant has a reasonable time frame for this future development, the trees along the frontage alone must be installed because it is bare of any trees or vegetation at this time. The applicant had contended that when we develop it in the future, those trees will get taken down if we install them now, And that is not necessarily true because in the future too, the greenbelt area along Schooner Drive will have to be maintained with the landscaping. So it's not necessarily true that any vegetation installed along the frontage will be coming out. So we recommend that the Planning Commission set a condition of 3 years for the applicant to begin the application process for future development area. If within 3 years, that is April 2025, they do not make a formal application to the township to start the process to develop the parcel, that frontage will have to be provided with frontage landscaping under the ordinance requirements. Otherwise, that site is likely to not have landscaping along its frontage indefinitely. So we are still giving them 3 years in which to make their decision regarding the future of that parcel and go ahead and install the landscaping. With regard to provision of a 45-foot wide greenbelt with berm and a screen wall fence in lieu of the 60-foot wide greenbelt berm as required by the ordinance, and the Planning Commission did approve that along the west side of the property as part of your preliminary approval. Their tree survey previously indicated that they were removing a few trees that were outside their site boundaries, and we had brought to their attention that you cannot remove trees off-site, and the applicant has clarified that the couple of trees that they're removing off-site are located within the Detention Pond berm that is located on the northeast corner of the site, and in order to fix the berm, they actually have to remove those trees to accommodate it. Township engineer approval, I will defer to Mr. Potter to summarize whatever the engineering requirements and detention requirements are for the site. The Planning Commission had also conditioned that one light pole should be installed at the entrance into the site from Schooner Drive, just like every other business there has. And the revised plan does have a 15-foot tall light pole at the entrance of the access drive. We had asked for a revised building architecture to add some detail in the form of banding or decorative block facing Schooner. Now, the plan submitted shows that the building will be constructed of block with standing seam metal panels and a metal roof. Due to the single-story low stature of the building and the addition of significant number of windows, we believe the architectural elevation that is proposed is not imposing on the site. It gives it more the look of a small-scale office workshop type of use rather than an industrial building, which is characterized by lots of doors. So we believe the architecture that is proposed at this time meets the intent of the ordinance. And finally, notation of all colors of the building and submission of colored renderings, which the applicant has done at this time. Based on our review of the project, it's taken the applicant a couple of tries in order to meet all the requirements for preliminary site plan approval. So it's a recommendation that the Planning Commission grant final site plan approval for JSP Builders to construct a new industrial building on Schooner Drive, subject to a condition, one condition, that is installation of landscaping along the site's remaining frontage, the area that is designated as future development area, if no formal plan for development of the area is submitted to the township officially by April 2025. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Krishnan, Mr. Potter.
Thank you. This one's a little longer than the last one. Our letter is dated February 22nd, 2022. And to summarize, we are recommending approval of the engineering final site plan, but subject to a condition. So it's a conditional approval. There's various small conditions for the water service and the sanitary that can be taken up in pre-construction checklist time. We usually don't hold up applicants at this point. But there is one issue with the storm sewer system, the stormwater management. There's been an ongoing assertion that the whole site development was developed so that several parcels could be developed without on-site detention, that it could be directed to an off-site detention basin. And that detention basin had calculations that showed they had accounted for that. We have not seen those calculations or the original plans that would substantiate that. We did receive several documents this evening through our planning director, through the applicant. I did get a chance to look through those, and still we didn't receive anything that was conclusive. There was one final document that our director did find that showed part of this site development, and I believe at the time it was Eros Lewis Norson May that did the site plan, who, that firm was later acquired by Stantec, so they may have the plans. So we recommend that the developer contact Stantec, and they may be able to acquire those plans, but that's a condition. And the basic premise is this, is that we don't have a problem with what they're saying, that if the site was originally developed and that detention for the runoff was created in another area, that would be fine as long as we have as-built plans for that with the appropriate easements to show that that was properly done and recorded. There is a deed restriction that kind of pertains to that, kind of references that, but deed restrictions to us are just record documents. They're not necessarily legal documents or a record document. There's some legal connotation to property owners, but from an engineering standpoint, it pardon the pun, it doesn't hold water, okay? So we're willing to work with the applicant, their engineer, to try and track this down, and we'll have to take it from there. But that's a condition that there's that they substantiate that claim that it was done. We have not seen that yet. So it's a conditional approval subject to that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Director Power?
Mr. Chair, I'll speak again to the fire marshal's comments. There's a letter in your packet dated February 16th, 2022, based on the plans that made it into the packet. I'll mention one condition in this letter that is in flux based on some ongoing conversation with the applicant and a commitment by the applicant, but it's just not something that has showed up on the plans that's in your packet tonight. As you can see in the report dated February 16th, many of the fire marshal's comments from earlier in the review process pertaining to site access have been addressed. There's a comment that address numbers shall be provided on the street side of each building, and some comments about the visibility of those address numbers. With regard to fire protection and water supply, there's a comment that no part of any buildings and structures shall be more than 250 feet from a hydrant. And there was some discrepancy between the applicant's interpretation of the length that's required based on the run of how you would carry basically the hose from the fire truck. And that was the reason for some ongoing discussion about this condition. And to my understanding, the applicant has committed to adding an additional fire hydrant to satisfy the requirements here in this letter. So this comment is in the process of being addressed. And so there's an additional comment that one fire hydrant located on Schooner Drive is shown on the plans. But there's a comment that the north side of the building is over 250 feet from either hydrant that's near the site. So that is, again, being addressed with the addition of a hydrant, or will have to be addressed with the addition of a hydrant. An approved water supply capable of supplying the needed fire flow must be provided for all new buildings. And then we get into specific building access and communications comments, which will be addressed as part of building plan review. The first being the installation of an E-clock Knox box is required for all tenants within the building. The Knox box location will be verified prior to the installation on the building. Emergency responder radio coverage system is required unless it can be proven after building is constructed and occupied that the coverage is insufficient. This will be verified by the agency holding jurisdiction prior to a final certificate of occupancy. And then there are some comments about the final submittal requirements, including the provision of a digital CAD layout of the building. These are conditions that I've spoken with the fire marshal about and just need to be addressed prior to construction.
Thank you, Director Power. Do we have a presentation by the applicant, or would you like to make any comments on this item?
Speak into the microphone.
Good evening. My name's Scott Wright. I'm the architect. As Mason Brown. He's a civil engineer. We're representing Mr. Patel. He's had a bit of a family emergency. His wife's in the hospital right now, so he couldn't be here tonight. And so we told him we'd cover everything for him. Okay, is that better? So, yes, we've been going through this for a better part of a year. Going through the last set of review letters, the two things that we have outstanding. We don't have an issue with putting a date on the development of the landscaping on Schooner Drive. Mr. Patel's a little hesitant about putting that in because we're not sure exactly what we're gonna do in terms of drive cuts and sidewalks and things like that. So he prefer not to spend money that he's gonna throw away. It was proposed, talking to Dan tonight about a bond that would cover the cost of those trees, which makes sense because that money then would turn around and get spent for the landscaping and we wouldn't necessarily be wasting it today. If we knew what we would do 2 years from now, I wouldn't be standing here. So, so it's a little, this is a first for him. He's relocating his business to Van Buren Township from Ann Arbor. He's taking the westerly portion of the building for his business. And in his mind, in order to justify the building of the building, he wanted to do a multi-tenant building that he could rent out to multiple tenants. So we designed from his building, his area first, then to the tenants first, giving them actually the better portion of the site, access to the drive and whatnot in order to encourage development of it. He currently is in a building very similar to this without a truck well. And that's part of his problem because about once a week he gets tractor trailers and he's a little tough to unload them when you only have a 10 by 10 overhead door. So that was what drove the necessity for the truck well. He may or may not allow tenants to use it. He will, as it was stated, it will be subject to their lease agreement. So there's not going to be any heavy industrial, any heavy type of use like that. It's light industrial, small businesses, things like that is what he's catering to. In a perfect world, he'd like to build another one of these and then maybe another one of these, or maybe it's one bigger building depending on how things work out. But we see what can happen with our economy. So back to the landscaping, we don't have a problem with making that agreement that we could post a bond when we get into construction for future landscaping down here. I know we've been going back and forth on the stormwater. He bought the property being handed the deed restriction that said you don't have to do detention, so he bought it. We have been working with going through all kinds of documentation as to see if we could find any information on, because somebody approved it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. The two adjoining properties to the north, they are using the stormwater system in the street. They're draining to it. There are leads to the property that have stormwater calcs to them. So we're willing to work through this and try and figure it out. That what was the name of the engineer?
Oh,
Stantec. We will reach out to them and see what we can track
There's
down.
a job number on there. We'll work with you guys. Hopefully they've got records
And I sent some additional information today to Orchard Hills.
Okay.
That maybe they can pull something out of their files. It's funny, 1998, 2000, 20 years ago, that's a long time ago. I have everything I've ever done as an architect going back to 92. So I find that odd, but whatever. So.
And if I could add just briefly on the, verification of the storm system, we're glad to work with you on details to figure out how to verify what's there. If we all go out and look at it, because there's end sections and culverts under drains. It's not all enclosed. We don't have to go down into manholes to see how things connect into the open drain going down to the pond. We're glad to work those details out with you to your satisfaction.
Okay. Same here, guys.
Okay. And if I may, for the hydrant coverage, did speak with the fire marshal, and we sent out new drawings that I believe he approved. But we're taking this hydrant and putting it here, and believe he's satisfied.
Yeah, that was my recollection as well from talking with him.
I don't think I broke your building here.
Sorry for the trap there.
Questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Jar.
I do have a question for Mr. Potter. What is the applicant's recourse if they cannot find the information on the drainage system that you're looking for?
Well, we're trying to be positive that they will find some records. There's records somewhere, but as was stated several years ago, around Y2K time, if things weren't microfiched, they usually got pitched. And so a lot of these older drawings that were record drawings as far as permit applications and plan reviews, they disappeared. They got, it's paper and could fill up a room like this. Things happen. So if the microfiche doesn't exist, later on they scanned all that, then they threw the microfiche out. Okay, so it is a task to try and find some of these older as-built, and we look for record as-built drawings. The other thing, the recourse would be that you can try and reverse engineer that, but for this property owner, it would be quite an exercise to try and recreate something that's there, because it involves potential easements with a county drain, as-built easements based on the amount of flooding there, and that should have all been taken care of in the original plans when the property was being developed and the original plat was being dedicated. So we do see a lot of things that show up on deed restrictions that, quite frankly, are no longer valid or legal later on. So that's why we have to look at it. We know what it says, but we don't know what that means. So we have to have the documentation to show it. And unfortunately, I mean, we have some drawings now that I think you received this afternoon, so that's a start, okay?
And the developer and the engineer are both gone. So that doesn't make it any.
Now, unfortunately, in a case like this, let's say it was never done, and you are required to provide stormwater detention. There's legalities when the transaction was taking place, when the purchase, what was represented, all that stuff. But the bottom line is that stormwater detention has to be provided at some point, okay, if it's not there. And then that kind of sends you back to square one as to how you go about doing that.
Okay.
And Mason, you've been around enough to know on these properties, it's, it takes some real estate, right?
Oh, yes.
So that's very expensive.
Yeah, we'll put on your roof.
Well, you have to
Yeah.
take how much the real estate costs in relation to giving it away for detention as opposed to putting bigger pipe under the parking lot.
Right, what makes sense.
Right, so that typically, we call that the due diligence period, when the property owner, when the purchaser is looking at the property and he sees that in the deed restriction, and then the due diligence say, what does that mean exactly to me, Sometimes they take it at face value, but it may or may not exist.
There was, I really hope you guys can find the right information. I want to be positive for you. I think you'll find it. If it does not appear and there needs to be significant stormwater re-engineering, would this plan come back to Planning Commission for approval on the engineering side?
Yeah, the letter would be rescinded
Okay.
because they can't meet the condition, and then they have to kind of rework the engineering plans.
Great.
And that might trigger some other things, but
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the applicant. When you're talking about a regional detention facility that services, does it service all the properties that are on Schooner Drive? Is that your understanding?
No, our understanding is the west
Side
side,
of Schooner.
the road,
Okay.
entire road.
Does it include Contractor Steel, which is to your south after the vacant?
Well, it looks like
Because
it might, based on what you found tonight.
Because
Because
Contractor
that would
Steel
include
went
the-
through, Contractor Steel went through a site plan approval, or they almost went through engineering for an addition not so long ago, and then they abandoned it. They might have some documents that might help you. You might want to, because I know Mazer Polymer built not so long ago, and so did Contractor Steel. They went through the project process, but then they decided not to build for whatever their internal discussions were. But maybe they have some engineering documents that might help you. You might want to reach out.
Yeah, the engineer that did the two northern properties
Mhm.
was adamant that we didn't have to do stormwater detention. So I'm like, let me see your stuff.
Right.
He moved from one office to another in that timeframe. He's like, he found a few fax documents and some stuff with OHS.
Do the owners of those buildings not have copies of their original approval documents, even if the engineer is gone?
I don't think they're the same owners. It's different names in the agreement than what's occupying those buildings. Now, it's possible, but I find
It might be
most
worth-
owners don't have anything.
Right, right.
It
They
might be
usually
worth
pitch 'em.
reaching out to everybody down the street, including Contractor Steel, to hunt those.
Steel might be the best bet, since they were there 22 years ago,
Yeah.
or 24 years ago, right?
Yeah, contractors don't throw anything away, okay? So I will add one more thing. I did take the time to call the Wayne County reviewer, who is OHM. And I spoke to the engineer and I said, how could you approve this without acknowledging these plans? And he said, well, that's come up, we're being questioned on that. So they may be rescinding that letter, but it's for the same thing. And it's not, it's just a factual thing that has to be buttoned down here to say, okay, does it in fact exist and where? Because if it exists, I can tell you, it's an easy calculation that was done. The drainage breakup sheet, the calculation, the follow-up easements, their as-built easements, and it should be a fairly easy, but you just got to find the drawings, okay?
I'll just give kind of a procedural comment on this whole topic. So if there's some good records from some of the past approved projects and we're able to find basically what we need is validation that this site's runoff is validated by the original calculations for the overall detention pond, which appears to be the same one that was used for Contractor Steel, then it looks like we're in good shape, and hopefully we can find records that kind of validate that and go ahead and collaborate with the applicant and with Wayne County to verify that. We would do that before the pre-construction meeting, of course, and before any soil gets moved around on the site. Now, if there's a change to the stormwater design requirements because of what's found, depending on if it's a minor change that is primarily underground and involves piping adjustments and some minor adjustments to the pond, of course, it would be a rescinding of the engineer's letter. But at that point, it may just be a revisiting of this final site plan review. If for some reason it fundamentally alters the site or requires the site to expand, then we'd probably take it back through a full amended site plan review process. But I think we're all cautiously optimistic that based on the representations we've had so far, we're kind of moving on this path of what you have before you tonight. And we'll just want to obviously verify it before we get into construction.
Anything further, Commissioner?
Yes, sir, one more thing. I know that Ms. Krishnan had a recommendation for a 3-year, I would call it a reprieve or putting off of the landscaping. I would say, you gentlemen spoke about a performance bond. I was going to bring up that normally I think we would have something like a performance bond if we weren't simply requiring a strict adherence to the ordinance and an installation of the landscaping. The thought of having a performance bond, though, does, in my mind, make the time frame, pushing the time frame out for the landscaping more acceptable. I would be behind that proposal with a performance bond attached to it. That said, I would like to know where your recommendation came for. I think you said a 3-year, I don't know what we call that, a reprieve. What did you call that in the document? And how did you come up with the 3 years?
I suggested a 3-year deferment because the applicant has taken a considerable time to get to this point in the project. So assuming they can figure out their detention issues, and by the time they get to construction, typically development projects, I'm assuming it'll take them another 18 months to get this project done. The typical extension period on projects is 18 months. So it was like, okay, let's add it in and put it around 3-year mark. So it's not specifically written anywhere in ordinance. It seemed like a reasonable assumption based upon the timeline it's taken them to do their stuff so far. So, but a performance bond is a good idea. It gives them some incentive if Mr. Patel is doing well enough to invest in doing something else with the rest of the property.
And that is our hope, that Mr. Patel is successful in this, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, that is our hope. I did want to finally say, I do like the look of the new building. The pretty picture, it's very nice. And the building's come a long way, and I'm excited to see the project moving in the direction that it is moving. That is my last question, I promise, on this issue.
Any other questions or comments? Only thing I'd have to say is I'd like to actually being able to see a picture and hold it instead of, so it's kind of nice actually getting the picture to take a look at it that way instead of on Zoom like we have been. So, any questions, comments from anyone here tonight or from the public? Is there anybody? I'm guessing I know the answer already, Director Power, but I'm asking. No virtual hands, okay. Commission ready to take action on this agenda item? Just need a motion.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would at this time make a motion to grant the applicant, Sam Patel, on behalf of JSB Builders, LLC, final site plan approval to construct a 16,280 square foot multi-tenant light industrial building with truck well and related site improvements at the site located to the south of 6032 Schooner Drive, that having a tax parcel of V83-018-99-0003-708, based on the analysis and subject to the conditions described in McKenna letter dated February 9th, 2022, Fishbeck letter dated February 22nd, 2022, the Van Buren Fire Report dated February 16th, 2022, the letter from staff dated March 4th, 2022, with the added condition that a performance bond shall be attached to the landscaping condition as opposed to the condition placed in the McKenna letter.
All right, thank you so much. Do I have a support for the motion? A motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Budd. Any discussions or comments on the motion? Means we have none. Can we have a roll call, please?
Callie Barr,
Yes.
Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Brian Kelly.
Is approved, and you have final site plan approval. Thank you. Thank you for coming in this evening. Yes.
Yes, sir, it is nice seeing you in person.
Item number 3 on the agenda, case number 22-008, Van Buren Charter Township Community Center renovation and addition preliminary site plan. The applicant, Stephen J. Gert, on behalf of owner Van Buren Charter Township, has applied for roughly 13,446 square feet of renovations and a 16,411 square foot gymnasium addition adjacent to the existing municipal building, renovations to the existing building, and the construction of associated pavements and utilities. The location's 46425 Tyler Road, parcel ID 8306199006000. The site is located east of Quirk Road and south of Tyler Road. A presentation from Director Power.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Planning Commission, and everybody attending tonight. I have the honor of serving as the role of both Planning Director and Planning Reviewer tonight, which is customary for anything on public properties owned by the township. So I appreciate the opportunity to go through this exercise and all the assistance from staff, including our planning consultant, on kind of checking some of my expectations and going through the findings with me. That being said, as the Chair mentioned, if you are sitting here tonight, you're very familiar with the site that's being reviewed. This is the Township Hall complex here at 46425 Tyler Road. Our campus here is zoned OT, Office Technology, and under that zoning, the context for a lot of the review comments in the report you have it falls under that zoning, and that's the basis for a lot of the comments. So here's an overall site plan view of the roughly 14.5-acre site, including the proposed building addition. As mentioned, the building addition is, the improvements include about 13,500 square feet of renovations, as well as gross floor area addition of 21,763 square feet, including 16,411 square foot footprint and first floor addition, as well as about 5,300 square feet of mezzanine addition. There's extensive programming inside of the building. I can summarize it, but I think our applicant will be able to go through that better than I could. But there are going to be a variety of indoor and outdoor activities at the site. And again, it's on a campus that's about 14.5 acres. The proposed building addition, by the way, has a height that'll be about 34 feet, 8 inches tall. There's a portion of the architectural site plan included in your packet that goes through all of the programming of the site. Just to summarize, it's a publicly owned recreational facility. That's the basic use that's being proposed for the addition. That is a permitted use by right in the OT zoning district. It behooves us to acknowledge that there are aspects of the site that are outdoors, and these are accessory to the principal use. That's important to mention because outdoor uses as principal uses are prohibited in the OT zoning district. But of course, within the OT zoning district, you have public schools, public recreational facilities like this one. And this one has been used in the past for a variety of both indoor and outdoor uses. So this is very much consistent with past use of the site. Again, I'll let the applicant speak more about the programming. My comments are more about the exterior of the site and the architecture of the building. In looking at the overall site, I'll go through a series of comments that fall into categories that are guided by our zoning ordinance. Firstly, the dimensional requirements of the site are met. There's a required 50-foot front yard setback, a 50-foot side yard setback on sides adjacent to residential zoning, and a required 30-foot rear yard setback. There are some boundary lines that are listed as approximate on the site plans, but the improvements are consistent with the existing length of improvements on the site. So as long as there's no encroachment within a few feet of that property line, there should not be any issues with that note in the plans. I would like to go through some things regarding access, circulation, and traffic impacts. Overall, one of the most important things to note with the site is that based on some restrictions that were sought by our elected officials and our public safety department, as well as our public services department, there is a restriction of access to the employee parking and public safety personnel parking areas. This does affect some of the layout items on the site. What we have today is a connection between the east and west edges of the site on the south end of the building. That will go away with this addition. It's sort of necessitated by the logical expansion of the building and these closures of access. Just important to note that, and there is sufficient justification for that closure. You can see the 2 points where there will be a cutoff between what's now open access in this image. So right at that northwest corner of the site where the parking lot angles in, there will be a closure and a little bit of a landscaping island there. And there will also be a gated access for employee parking. The public safety justification for that is compelling, and also the design of the building supports that closure. And I think it's important to talk about this because we have to acknowledge there are about 400 parking spaces proposed on this plan, about 305 of which will be visitor parking. That parking will access Tyler Road on the main driveway. And in reviewing that, staff have, both staff from the applicant's side and reviewing staff have talked about this. And it is a logical way to organize the access to the site when you consider that a lot of the use of the building, which we'll hear more about, involves complementary activities, smaller gatherings in different spaces within the building, and it's very unlikely that the entire parking lot will be full at a given time. So overall, I do recommend that the Planning Commission approve the access configuration for this site. A couple of minor notes: there will be significant additions of sidewalks throughout the site, and I'll point out just at a high level the kind of where the arrows are pointing. You're going to have sidewalks that access the parking areas along the east edge of the building, as well as the campus along the south end of the building throughout the area that connects the parking to the plaza. Parking spaces, this is a point that comes up in every site plan review. The applicant has demonstrated both the adequate dimensions for parking spaces as well as the adequate number of minimum parking spaces. There's only a small addition of parking on the site with this proposed site plan, but it does meet the minimum zoning ordinance requirements based on the usage of the building, which includes 181 spaces being required for the community center and senior center, 7 spaces being required for the recreation center, and 50 spaces being required for the theater, as well as 119 spaces being required for the existing Township Hall offices and public safety areas. One condition that I have regarding parking configuration is that there should be a designated snow storage area in the parking lot to make sure there's adequate room to place the snow in a way that doesn't conflict with parking. Landscaping and screening is a big source of a lot of planning review comments. We have a very robust landscaping ordinance, and it was important for us to reflect that ordinance in this review. So in doing so, we wanted to make sure that we were fairly reviewing this in a way that really reflected what's being, the portion of the site that's being worked on today. So there has been a recent overall campus re-landscaping effort in the last couple of years. So there's been new landscaping installed on the north and northwest edges of the campus. And so what I really wanted to do here was focus on the area of the site that's being improved and apply the applicable landscaping standards to this portion of the site. So I'll read from those standards. The first one under section 10.103A of the zoning ordinance regards frontage landscaping. There really is no new frontage area adjacent to the public road, so that standard is already met and does not apply to this new review. When we get into parking lot screening, there's a 10-foot open space buffer surrounding parking lots along the site's frontage. That remains in place. And then you get into the details of the parking based ordinance requirements, and those get pretty detailed. So I'll try to summarize those, but essentially 5% of the interior parking lot area requires landscaping, and there shall be one deciduous tree planted for each 300 square feet of interior landscaping. Those are some of the most significant requirements regarding interior parking lot landscaping. Based on those requirements, the applicant has met the minimum standard by providing that there's about 3,203 square feet of overall interior parking lot aerial landscaping required, which would be about 11 or 12 trees, and there are 15 trees proposed, so this standard is met. There really is no new loading area, no new display area, so there are no landscaping requirements regarding those items. As far as green belts, this is an important one to go through. You can see on this image the line of the existing parking on the east end of our site. It's less than 5 feet from the adjacent property line. Now, the adjacent property line is the Meadows of Van Buren condominiums, and it is a residential land use. However, there's a significant existing open space buffer separating this site from any of the neighboring properties. So it's reasonable to maintain that line of parking adjacent to that site and continue that reduced setback. So I would recommend that the Planning Commission modify the green belt along that east line from what's required as 20 feet down to the 4'9" that's existing. This reduced setback has not been an issue for any of the past uses of the site. There's been no issue with the relationship with the neighboring property with softball games or any of the other activities that have been outside. And there will be significant shrub landscape screening along that edge of the site. So staff supports modification of that type B green belt buffer requirement along the east edge. And I also recommend that the Planning Commission can modify the standard requirement under section 10.103E subsection B to enable 3 shrubs per tree in place of what's otherwise a requirement for 1 tree every 20 feet along this area, just based on some constraints on the space available for a root ball of a tree. Getting into some specific standards for the office technology zoning district regarding landscaping. Essentially, your perimeter of your building defines how many trees and shrubs you require around the perimeter of the building. And this standard is met, except that there's one adjustment that I'm requesting, and this may be due to just some lack of clarity on the requirement. So there's actually 1 deciduous tree required for every 40 feet of perimeter, 1 ornamental or flowering tree required for every 100 feet of perimeter. The provision by the applicant has been switched, so there's actually more ornamental trees than shade trees or deciduous trees, and I'm just recommending that we go back to the ratio of basically 1 shade or deciduous or evergreen tree per 40 feet and 1 ornamental tree per 100 feet. So that's a minor adjustment to the plant list. Open space landscaping, there's about 86,150 square feet of open space. There needs to be landscaping based on 1 tree every, I believe it's 3,000 square feet of that area, and that requirement has also been met. However, there's a note about some trees that do not meet the minimum caliper requirements in this area in terms of the trunk diameter. And I just recommend that staff should be enabled to work with the applicant to provide landscaping credit for trees that do not meet the minimum standards if there can be a reasonable way to evaluate those. Finally, Detention Pond. This is kind of leading up to the last set of comments on the site plan. There really are no landscaping comments at this time regarding the detention pond design. There are going to be some comments from the township engineer regarding detention and stormwater management here. And I think in the evolution of the plans and the final construction drawing of the plans, we'll have some more comments on these ponds, which are designed as dry detention basins currently, and whether there needs to be any kind of landscaping treatments or maybe some French drain with rocks and some ground cover to help manage that stormwater. But for right now, there's really no detailed landscaping comments on the pond. Quickly on lighting, there is existing lighting that's being relocated, so there's really no new lighting to consider. There are no proposed changes to the dumpster. There is going to be new fencing, and there's a fence detail that's provided where the fencing is provided to secure the employee and public safety areas. I would also ask for a detail on the proposed gate to the employee parking area. And then finally, maybe of most visual interest here is the architectural character of the proposed addition. So there are specific architectural requirements under the zoning ordinance specific to the OT zoning district. I wanted to point out that the OT zoning district calls for certain treatments of the buildings, including things like pitched roofs. However, there are findings that the Planning Commission can entertain to deviate from those standards. And in this case, we have a building that has, it's multi-level, both in the existing building and what's proposed. It's more square. It's got some protrusion and depth that's created by more rectangular and square shapes. So I think that we can modify the requirements of the OT zoning district to allow these changes. What you're looking at here is metal panel, architectural metal panel, brick, glass veneer, brick veneer and glass. So some high quality architectural treatments on the building that I think tie it in well with the existing building, and I think the Planning Commission can accept these architectural treatments, subject to your commentary on them. The last few comments pertain to signs, and then some topographic and grading information. Signs, there really is not much to say at this point. We'll process our own sign permit for any proposed signs on the face of the building. You can see what the character of the signs is on this elevation. And then grading information, there are some minor grading adjustments throughout the plan that are shown. And with that, I will just go right to my conditions on this report. I think I've kind of summarized them in my other comments, but first, we'll just need to, the Planning Commission will have to review and consider a statement regarding the public safety need to justify the closure of access between the site's visitor and employee parking areas. I've stated that comment tonight, so I would just ask the Planning Commission to consider that and accept it as part of the access of this site. I recommend the Planning Commission approve the site's access configuration based on the site programming data and on the condition of that public safety need. I recommend that there's a designated snow storage area in the parking lot. I recommend that the Planning Commission should modify the greenbelt along the east lot line from 20 feet to 4'9". I recommend that the length of the type B perimeter in the affected area of this site plan should be listed on the site plan. That the Planning Commission should modify the standard requirement for number of trees along the greenbelt area on the east end to substitute shrubs for trees. I recommend that there is a swap in the deciduous or evergreen and ornamental trees around the building. And I recommend that staff should be allowed to work with the applicant to provide appropriate landscaping credit for trees that are not quite to the caliper of our required plant minimum caliper. I recommend that there's a detail of the proposed gate. And finally, that the Planning Commission should review the plans for consistency with the architectural requirements of Section 3.114F of the Van Buren Township zoning ordinance and consider the harmony of the proposed elevation with the existing and approve the elevation as presented. So that is my report. I'm glad to answer any questions about it.
Thank you so much, Director Power. Mr. Potter?
Reviewed the plans our letters dated March 3rd. These are staff level review letter. So a lot of little comments here that can be addressed as the plans are developed. So we didn't have any objection to it. Going forward, there's one condition on the stormwater that we wanted revisited here regarding whether a permanent pool can be provided in the detention basin. And so as the plans are developed, that can be addressed. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Director Power, I believe there's a letter from the Van Buren Fire Department as well.
There is, and I'm going to jump over to the other microphone, but I have one clarification in that letter. And I'll read the comments, but there's one thing that has been addressed in the most recent correspondence with the fire marshal. His comments summarize that the plan as submitted is approved with some exceptions. The first one, which is the one I'm going to talk about, is that there is a dead-end fire department access road in excess of 150 feet. And what we're talking about there is the, if you see on this plan, the long run of, if I can get my cursor, I'm not sure if my cursor is going to show it, but the long run of the existing parking down in this section of the site includes a length that exceeds 150 feet. And so basically the fire trucks need a way to turn around there. However, that's an existing condition and there are no buildings in that portion of the site. So there's really a lot of flexibility to deviate from that requirement. And so the fire marshal and fire chief have looked at that closely, and they're willing to modify that condition of their report. Otherwise, there are some comments about water supply. A fire department connection should be unobstructed by vehicle parking. The fire department connection needs to be moved to the southeast corner of the building by the hydrant, or one parking space in front of the FDC, or fire department connection, will need to be eliminated and marked accordingly. And then there are some things that will be addressed during building plan review, such as building, fire suppression, and fire alarm plans, and the provision of a two-way radio communication enhancement system, and making sure that there's minimum required radio signal strength for fire department communications. That's it.
Great, thank you so much, Director Power. Brings us to presentation from the applicant.
Yes. Yeah, we'll just get up.
You know, just one comment while they're getting, that picture we saw didn't show the parking lot double striped. The parking lots will be double striped, just so that we abide by our ordinances.
Yeah, just hit the. No, it's still on there, isn't it? Mhm. Try, see if you can override mine if you just, Windows.
Click this.
Mhm. All right, try entering that pin up on the screen.
Down there. Okay. Okay, here we go. See, how do I get rid of this here? That one? There we go. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Gettert, architect with Newman Smith. And with me tonight is Zach Funk, one of our designers who's provided a lot of assistance in the development of this project. So tonight we're just going to give you a little overview of the proposed design of the community center, and then answer any questions that that you may have. This is the overall site plan. As you saw in some of the drawings, that this is actually an architectural drawing that is overlain on a Google map image. You can see up at the top here, Tyler Road. And then kind of curving around here is the existing Township Hall. We are proposing to renovate this. Can you see my cursor? Yeah. This lighter brown area is the area that is going to be renovated. That includes the existing gymnasium and other spaces in the existing community center. And this block down here is the new gymnasium and fitness addition that we are adding. To the south, we are doing on the outside a performance plaza, which is this concrete area here with a large lawn that is
framed by 2 groves of trees. This performance area will be used for outdoor concerts, outdoor movies, open mic nights, and other events. It's planned to be used mostly during the day, but could be used in the evening as well. We're also proposing over on the west side an outdoor fitness patio that will be used by the staff to have outdoor yoga classes and things like that. It's right off of the fitness room that you'll see when we get to the plans. We do have a new entrance that we are developing on the east side of the building, and that ties into our reconfigured parking lot that runs all the way down to Quirk Park. We have made one adjustment since we submitted for site plan approval. We are going to extend the new sidewalk all the way down to Quirk Park and tie it into the pathway down there. As Dan mentioned, we are closing off the police and employee parking lot over off Quirk Road with a 5-foot-high decorative fence and with a security gate at the entrance to that point. This is a 3D image of the plan, and I'll just use it to orient you. We've kind of switched things up on you now. Tyler Road is over here on the right side. This is actually the senior center area. This is the area that's being renovated in here. And then this is the new gymnasium and fitness addition. As you come in the front doors of the building, the new entrance, there's a new lobby, a new control desk. And behind the control desk, you have the community center offices that are being provided. Directly across from the main entrance, we have the Black Box Theater. And behind that, a small addition that'll be the back of house space for that theater. That'll include some changing rooms, areas to put scenery and props together, etc. As you come down the hall along the administrative offices, you've got the restrooms and locker rooms. And further down, you've got a multi-purpose party room and a renovated senior room. Heading to the south, immediately adjacent and open to the lobby, we have a teen area. And this teen area has various seating for kids to hang out. There are actually 3 4-person booths where they can sit and do homework or play video games. There will be some soft seating and some gaming tables as well. That furniture has yet to be worked out in detail. Across from that, we have a child watch room or playroom and another multi-purpose party room. Moving further to the south, we've got the open fitness area, which is where all of the exercise equipment will be. And directly behind that, we have the dance or group exercise room. And outside of that, we'll have the exercise or outdoor exercise patio as well. And of course, to the south end, we have the new gymnasium. The gymnasium is sized to have a high school basketball court, 2 junior high sized basketball courts going in the opposite direction. It will also have volleyball and pickleball layouts as well. This is just the floor plan that we just looked at, if that makes things easier for you to see. Again, we have the new entrance here, the Black Box Theater, the back of house space for the Black Box Theater, the office area, the locker rooms and main restroom facilities, the party room, multipurpose room, the updated senior area, the teen area, the child watch or child play area, another multipurpose party room, the open fitness area, the group fitness area, and then the gymnasium. We also have a stairway and elevator that go up to a mezzanine to a jog walk track. And this is the jog walk track. You come up the stairwell here. There's a stretching area, and then the 3-lane track. There's also an emergency exit stair on the south side of the gymnasium. This is the elevation that you saw a little bit earlier. This lower area here is the existing building. We're going to reskin it in brick on this elevation. We're creating the new entrance here with a canopy and some simple signage on the edge of the canopy. We've got this vertical element here, which will have the logo on it, and it just helps to locate where the entrance is, and also helps balance some of the taller portions of the building to the south. The blue area here, which is metal panel, is the group fitness area, and then the area beyond is the gymnasium. This is the the south side of the building. This large beige area here is that exit stairwell out of the mezzanine and track. This will be used to show movies, or there can be other things placed on that wall temporarily, possibly art or things like that. And then we've got the yard in front with the groves of trees on either side. It's a little hard to see in these renderings, but at each corner of the gymnasium, we do have glazing. So as you're going around the track in either direction, you'll be able to look outside and catch views of the park beyond. And this is the west side. This is the gymnasium again. We are using 3 different brick, and we've actually got a brick panel here to give you an idea of what that looks like. We have a field brick, we have some accent stripes, and then at the base, to help break up the big facade, we're using a blend of a dark brick and a third textured brick. I'll bring that around a little more. And then as you get further down, again, we've got the group fitness area with the outdoor patio. So that's our presentation. If you have any questions, I can go back to any view that you like. Maybe start with this one.
All right, well, thank you so much. Great presentation. Comments, questions from commissioners?
I do.
The chair mention also, I don't think we mentioned in the audience tonight, we have our, also with the applicants team, Elizabeth Renault and Tammy Doring, our Community Services Director and Deputy Community Services Director. So I'm sure they'd be glad to, I'm not sure if I got that right, but they'd be glad to answer any questions you have about the project. Sorry, Tammy.
I have a comment.
Commissioner Jar.
It's a very nice looking addition to the building. I think that's a great picture. With regard to our section 3114 F and the requirement for peaked roofs with flat roofs being discouraged, but not forbidden. I would say that if this was a standalone building, maybe a new building, maybe even on the same parcel, I think I would be very much in favor of seeing the peaked roof as a design standard. But since this is in addition to a building that already has flat roof, I think it really looks nice. And I agree with you that it's very harmoniously designed. And I don't see a problem with having a flat roof extension in this case. Don't know how the other commissioners feel, but I think this is an acceptable look.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Jar. Any other comments?
Oh, just a comment, as a member of the Township Board, we have been looking at this for a long time now, and it's been our hope to have this completed for the residents and for our teens and for everyone to be able to use this building, so we've been excited. And I guess I need to thank Elizabeth and Tammy for all the work they've done, for the architects and what they've done, and Dan for your involvement. And it's been a lot of work by a lot of people, and I think we've looked at the different things 50 million times, and we've probably asked the same questions to you folks 50 million times, and they thought, aren't they ever going to get this? But we just want this to be so perfect and to look so good that we're just real excited.
We're excited too.
I have a question for you, sir. Could you tell me what a black box theater is?
Yeah, a black box theater is a space that can be used for any type of performance. It does not have a fixed stage. In our case, the room will hold up to 150 people. And let me go back there. We actually have kind of bleacher-type seating that actually comes out from the wall, but it is comfortable seating. It's not just a bleacher. We have loose seating that we're showing on either side. So this can be configured in many different ways to have theater in the round, to have small plays, to have a comedy night. There's just a wide variety of things that you can do with that space.
Great, thank you. I did have one other comment with regard to Director Power's recommendation for reducing the greenbelt buffering. I think it's important to note that we do have in our ordinance the ability for the Planning Commission under Article 10.106 to make the modification to the greenbelt standard if we feel that the requested modifications are keeping with the intent of the landscaping and screening requirements. And I think it's important for us to discuss that briefly. I want to say that having reviewed the site, I do believe that that is a good recommendation, that reducing the greenbelt width is something that I support and is a power that we have in the Planning Commission specifically. Again, I don't know what the rest of the commissioners think, but I support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Jar. I would agree. The green belt, the shift with the green belt size, the roof, I love the design of the building. I can't wait to see the project start coming together. I have a question for Director Power. You made some comments at the beginning about the acceptance. You had written in there that you wanted a written statement regarding the public safety closure of access. But then you mentioned that you were asking us to kind of approve that tonight. So would you, if a motion was to come up for this, would you like that in the motion, or would it just be the commissioners acknowledging that that would be satisfactory?
Yeah, I got a statement in coordination with the Community Services Director today. If the Planning Commission needs more information about it, I'm glad to reach out to the public safety folks, but staff supports the restriction of access based on some numerous conversations that have happened over the years. So if the Planning Commission is comfortable with that recommendation, you can just consider that and approve based on what we talked about tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Director Power, that's your revised letter from March 7th, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
And I guess the only comment I would make on the parking being closed off is when they put the addition on, we used to be able to drive in and go right around the whole circle. So now that's stopped. So we really want to keep folks who just think they can drive through. You'd be surprised at how many people drive through to do whatever. So the thought was that we didn't want them mingling, and so that's another reason why we thought it's a decorative fence. It's not all that tall, but we certainly hope it would keep anybody from trying to get in there and scale it. So that was another thought when we did that.
So I would agree that to have the separation, I think it's a good plan.
And this is a preliminary site plan approval that you're seeking tonight, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if there were other issues that came up, we would see it again in final?
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you. Any comments from public or or Director Power, do you want to check our Zoom chat to see if there's a virtual hand raised?
Need me to disconnect here?
Lisa Lothringer of our DDA has attended the meeting virtually tonight, but I don't see her hand raised, so I think she's just here to glean. So no more comments.
Thank you, Director Power. We're ready for a motion on this agenda item.
Well, Mr. Chair, I am excited about the project. I'd be happy to make it a 3 for this evening on the motions.
Thank you.
At this time, I would move to grant the applicant Stephen J. Gettert. Thank you, sir. On behalf of the owner, Van Buren Charter Township, their request for preliminary site plan approval to construct roughly 13,446 square foot of renovations and a 16,411 square foot gymnasium addition adjacent to the existing municipal building, along with renovations to existing building and the construction of associated pavements and utilities at the site located at 46425 Tyler Road, based on the analysis and subject to the conditions detailed in Dishback letter, March 3rd, 2020. The Van Buren Township Fire Report dated March 2022. Thank you, sir. Thank you. The Van Buren Township Fire Report dated March 1st, 2022, and the revised letter from staff dated March 7th, 2022.
Support for the motion?
Support.
I have a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Barr. Any comments or discussion on the motion? Seeing there's none, can we have a roll call, please?
Sherry Budd? Yes. Callie Barr? Yes. Jeff Jar?
Yes.
Brian Kelly?
Yes, and the motion passes. Okay, we have preliminary site plan approval. Thank you so much. Brings us to general discussion updates. Director Power?
Well, I have one general discussion update, and it's 9:20 p.m. tonight at this, want to bring this up, so it's kind of timely. I wanted to just begin a conversation about our meeting format. I've approached, I think, everybody at this point briefly about this, but our meeting times have historically been at 7:30. It's the latest of all the boards and commissions in the township, or tied for the latest. So I do want the Planning Commission to consider if there's a time that would be more convenient for you, and we should also think about what times are still accessible and convenient for the public. But just food for thought, if there are any other times, maybe anywhere from 4 or 5 o'clock, 6:30, up to the current time, I want to just have the Planning Commission start to consider if there are other times that would be acceptable. There's a public process for making a change like that. We would, of course, have a formal change that would be considered at the Board of Trustees level. But just something to think about for next time. I don't expect us to take action on that tonight, but I might reach out before the next meeting and just prompt you for some consideration of different meeting times. What I don't want to do is have a time that just because it's convenient maybe for the whole, if it excludes any one member of the planning commission who's serving right now, I certainly wouldn't want that. So we have to make sure it works for everybody and is good for the long-term life of the planning commission. But in the meantime, I'd just like you to consider it. I know you've been doing a lot of hard work with some really late meetings. So we'll connect on that topic moving into the next meeting. Feel free to speak on it tonight if you also have any thoughts on it.
Thank you so much. Any comments, any feelings at this point, or do we want to talk about it after we think about it?
I don't think we should go later.
I agree with that.
And I know one of the comments is 6 o'clock, 'cause that's when the board meeting starts, so that maybe it should mirror what that does. Like he said, all the other commissions and committee are meeting, either during the day or earlier. So we are one of the latest ones now. So, I mean, basically, we need to check with your work schedules. What's the earliest folks can be here, if, you know, but, yep, just a thought.
Sounds good. If we do it early enough, we can all get dinner while we're here.
Well, we could talk about that too. Pizza can be delivered.
Now. I think absolutely. I mean, I know from my schedule, I can come earlier for sure, but I probably not earlier than 5.
No, and I would think for most people, 6 might be the most convenient. That gives some people time to get home and get something to eat before they would want to come, and, yeah. But it just, 7:30 makes it so late when we go on, yeah.
Home by 9:30, 10 o'clock on some evenings.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any other items for general discussion this evening? All right. Motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Support? Support. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great night, everybody.
Excited about that community center.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Good to see you.
To see you too, yes.